obviously we'll start with the New England implications. We kind of heard that there might be a pursuit of an offense coordinator in the books. That's now officially the case. I put out a list Thursday night. You can check it out on 985thesportshub.com of 16 potential candidates for the offensive coordinator job. And now this morning, the first interview, and you heard Phil say in that clip there that it was a lot of defensive coordinator candidates, a lot of special teams coordinator candidates. Nick Caley is the first offensive coordinator interview on the book. So he's the Rams tight ends coach, but he was here for a long time before that. So he joined the Patriots in 2015 as an offensive assistant, became the tight ends coach in 2017, was in that role until last year, and then interviewed for the offensive coordinator job last year. And remember, Gerard Mayo was a part of those interviews. So they interviewed Adrian Clem was another guy they talked to, obviously O'Brien. Caley doesn't get the job. His contract was up, and he ends up going to the Rams, and he was the tight ends coach under Sean McVay this past year, and now coming back to interview. Wouldn't be at the top of my list. Has never called plays before. I don't think the Rams tight ends were that over-the-top impressive this year. Look, tight ends coach is a logical spot. Outside of quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach is the next best spot to pull an offensive coordinator from, because if you think about it, they're really involved in all elements of the offense, because tight ends are used like receivers and blockers. So you got to be tied in with the receivers coach, the offensive line coach, the running backs coach. There's a lot of balls in the air as a tight ends coach. So positionally it makes sense, but I'd like to see them shoot a little higher than a guy like Nick Caley.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of the Rams, but more to Zach Robinson. And pass game coach, passing coach, whatever he is.
Coordinator and
quarterbacks coach. Yeah. And not just him, but I'm pretty sure it was a whole, operation with the Rams. But my main reason was not because he was here for a little while. It was, I believe player development is something the Patriots really need. And if you look over at the Rams, Kyron Williams, running back, Puka Nacua, Atwell, they had young guys who out of nowhere just lit it up. And, late round picks, I believe Williams was the 5th round and Nacua was the 5th round pick. But it seems to be some kind of player development going on there. And I think the Patriots really need that on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know, I'm not sure if it was Zach Robinson or whoever it was, but he was a part of it. He was there for it. And I think with them, they're going to be drafting a receiver. They're going to be drafting skill position players, maybe not in the first round, but somewhere down the line, I hope. But I think having somebody there for player development is huge, not just for the guys they're drafting, but for the guys that are here. We saw Tyquan Thornton not turning in much. We see Pop Douglas and his potential. I think having somebody there who can elevate those guys' talents and elevate their skills and kind of get those guys to explode would be huge. And again, you got a young quarterback coming in. So I think someone young, player development, I think would be a huge part. He wasn't a superstar quarterback by any means, but I believe Zach Robinson can put his arm around whoever they draft at the quarterback position. And just the whole player development part is what I'm really hanging on here with him, with his name coming up.
And the other thing about him, I would say the guys from the McVay tree, because you get this question out, well, especially the offensive guys, how much of it is just Sean McVay? Right? They're next to Sean McVay. And is that the reason for the success? The McVay tree has been pretty successful in guys going out on their own. Obviously, the Packers lost last night, but Matt LaFleur's a good head coach. Zach Taylor's had success in Cincinnati. Kevin O'Connell is a pretty good coach in Minnesota. Jed Fish at the college level. The one stain on his record is Brandon Staley, and everybody knows how I feel about Brandon Staley if you listen to the show every week, but he's a defensive coach. That's I'm not racing to hire whoever the Rams defensive coordinator is to call the Patriots offense. We've been there. We've tried that. They don't need to do that again. So I do like the guys from the Rams tree. They don't scare me. But again, if they want to do the McVay offense and that's the direction they want to go get Zach Robinson. Go get the guy that's really running it. I know Caley's familiar. And look, they're going to need a new tight ends coach. I assume Will Lawing is going to go with Bill O'Brien again, and maybe Caley comes back in his old role. And you got to remember that's what happens here sometimes. Like with a lot of these defensive coordinator interviews, it really should be DeMarcus Covington. I think everybody kind of recognizes that. But Michael Hodges, for instance, who they interviewed, who's the Saints linebackers coach, who's also a really good candidate. Hodges and Covington worked together at Eastern Illinois 6-7 years ago, bringing him in as the linebackers coach because you're going to need a new linebackers coach, right? When Mayo moving up, and we'll see what happens with Steve Belichick. So maybe Caley's interviewing for a spot like on Zach Robinson's staff or something like that. Are there any other names that are available, Cerrone, that stand out to you as people you'd like to see the Patriots talk to for the job?
Just for entertainment purposes only, Josh McDaniels.
And I think they will, unless he knows locked in he's going with Bill. I think they will talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, but with him, I understand it's bringing back bringing back another old name. It's like, well, as a head coach, we've seen him not really thrive. But as a coordinator, the guy seems to get it done. And again, with him, it's player development. He seems to be a decent guy at developing players. We see the Mac Jones with and without him. We see him utilize his strengths and weaknesses, and not just for the Mac Jones part of it, but just for, again, you're going to be bringing in another quarterback and young receivers. I think having somebody around who could develop those guys would be huge, and McDaniel seems like a guy that could do it. Now, I don't know how long he's going to be willing to be an assistant, or if he's going to have dreams of being a head coach over Mayo or anybody else. But I think, like you said, sitting under Bill, he obviously would know his role. I'm not here to take Bill's job. I'm just here to be his coordinator. Maybe he's still out to try and prove that he's a good guy without Bill Belichick around, and will not follow him and go do something elsewhere. But I absolutely would look at Josh McDaniels to bring in here as a coordinator.
A couple other guys that interest me, Shane Waldron, who's the Seahawks offensive coordinator. He's been there for a few years. Keenan McCardell, Sean Jefferson, who they talked to last year. T. Martin has done a very good job in Baltimore. And you talk about a guy that is quarterback focused. The one other one, you bring up Josh McDaniels, and Patriots fans are going to roll their eyes at this, and look, it was not a good game for Bobby Slowick yesterday. I don't think that was his best performance, the Texans offensive coordinator, but he's done a great job this year. He's not going to come here and be an offensive coordinator. He's not going to do a lateral move. He's going to get a head coaching job, but there's two obvious in-house candidates to replace him. The quarterback's coach is Jerron Johnson, and the wide receivers coach and pass game coordinator is Ben McDaniels, who is Josh's brother. Whoever the Texans don't promote, Patriots should absolutely go after in that regard. And one other guy, or two other guys that are interesting to me, Dan Pitcher has been the Bengals quarterbacks coach since 2020, and he's probably ready for that next step. And then somebody, I do think there's value. So outside of Josh McDaniels, we've named a lot of guys here: Zach Robinson, Nick Caley. They've never run their own show. Most of them have never even been offensive coordinators. And I think for a first-time defensive head coach, having somebody that can really be a head coach of the offense and just, taking a little bit more off Mayo's plate, I think there's value in that. So I look at a guy like Frank Reich. Maybe he'll get a chance to be a head coach again. I don't think so. But, that's a guy that Gerard Mayo's not really going to have to worry too much about the offense. The minutia day-to-day. Obviously, he's still the head coach. He's still going to have a say, but, he can kind of focus on coaching the football team and learning the nuances of being a head coach without having to get too lost in the offense. So a guy like Frank Reich would fit that bill. Obviously, a guy like Josh McDaniels would fit that bill. I even think some more experienced offensive coordinators, we'll see what happens with the Chargers, but if Kellen Moore is not retained in Los Angeles, he would be a guy I would look at in that regard. So there's a number of different ways they can go. And the thing I really struggle with at this point in this search, and I think there's good candidates in both of these categories. Do you want the young, upstart, up-and-coming, innovative, but inexperienced play caller? And that would be, Zach Robinson. That would be McCardell or Jefferson, Nick Caley. Some people have thrown out Wes Welker. Or do you want the guy that can be the head coach of the offense, set it and forget it, Josh McDaniels, Frank Reich? I doubt they'd be able to get him, but Cliff Kingsbury, that kind of guy. I'll let you go ahead on that. Then I have one more name I want to throw out.
There's one you mentioned earlier that it stuck out to me as you were talking.
Yeah.
I think he kind of sits in the middle of that is when you said T. Martin in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought about was T. Martin is like, hey, with that kind of offense, being around Lamar Jackson and that style of play and the way their passing game is kind of really taking off, you saw it on full display yesterday. If you get Jaden Daniels,
yes.
he's Lamar Jackson-esque. And with T. Martin being used to that kind of player, he can get him early and say, hey, this is what you can do to improve your game. He's not Lamar Jackson, athletic. He's not that far from Lamar Jackson's athletic ability. But I think having T. Martin, if your game plan is we're going to take Jaden Daniels, then let me go find a coach that can coach a Jaden Daniels style in offense. Give me a guy like that, and I think T. Martin would play into that. And I think them trying to decide who they're going to draft as quarterback kind of plays into what kind of coordinator they want.
Absolutely. And that's why, to your point on Martin, maybe I don't know that he'd leave Baltimore for a lateral move, but if you throw pass game coordinator on his title in addition to quarterbacks coach and he comes and works, directly under a Zach Robinson or directly under a Shane Waldron, and then he's clearly established as the next, like when that guy gets hired away in 2 years, he's going to take over as the offensive coordinator. Like T. Martin's still a guy, positional coaching wise, I would try to go after if Jane Daniels is the plan. The one other guy, and we're kind of running over here, so just real quick on this. So Bill O'Brien's going to Ohio State. He's going to be the offensive coordinator there. Their offensive coordinator, and they just re-released the titles, and this guy's now the co-offensive coordinator, is Brian Hartline. And he got that title last year. Brian Hartline, for people who don't follow college football, look, I can put it very simply. Brian Hartline's been the wide receivers coach at Ohio State since 2018. Think about the wide receivers that have come out of Ohio State since 2018. He is one of, if not the best in the sport at any level of identifying and developing wide receiver talent. I do not understand how he has not been poached away from Ohio State. I've been wanting the Patriots to go after him for years. If he is upset that Ryan Day jumped him with Bill O'Brien, I would place a very quick call into Brian Hartline and see what his situation is, because I can't believe he's still there. I can't believe no team, college or pro, has made him an offense coordinator yet, because the job he has done with those receivers and also working with C.J. Stroud, he took on an expanded role a couple years ago. That's a guy that absolutely deserves a bigger role, and I don't know how he hasn't gotten one yet. So, again, list up 985thesportshub.com. All of those guys are in there. There's a few other names as well, from the logical to the long shots for the Patriots offensive coordinator search. But we do know the Patriots will have an offensive coordinator because titles are important to Gerard Mayo.